Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we will be looking at a fascinating game by a 2496 rated player by the name of Guha Mitrabha and 2768 rated player by the name of Hikaru Nakamura. White plays the English opening, Hikaru responds with king's pawn to e5. Then both players bring out all their knights, which makes the game develop into the English opening 4 knights variation. White plays king's pawn to e4 taking control of the d5 and f5 squares. Black plays the dark square bishop to b4 attacking the knight and threatening it with a trade in which white loses material. White defends this with queen's pawn to d3, black does the same. And then white kicks off black's bishop with a3, black's bishop retreats. White threatens again with pawn to b4. White then moves his bishop to e3 trapping black's bishop. Black then moves the bishop to g4 attempting to trade. White responds with bishop to f2 defending the knight. Both sides then castle and black trades both bishops, and then for the first time in this game Hikaru does an inaccuracy, and then to balance it out so does white. Both sides push pawns and then white does a mistake with pawn to c5. A pawn trade happens and then Hikaru's first great move of the game with queen's rook to a1, trading rooks. Then a few more trades happen with both sides having a pawn deep in each other's territory. Queens move up and then Hikaru does his first miss of the game with queen to e4. Now this is what he should have done in this position. Why? Because this move attacks the queen, white then threatens the queen and Hikaru heads back to the original spot. Then white supports the b-pawn with rook to b8 and black supports his queen. White pushes the pawn but black ignores and white pushes again, then black moves his h-pawn to h5 to stop the bishop from going to g4. White stops supporting the pawn and starts supporting the queen. Black moves his pawn and for some reason, white moves his king to the corner of the board. Then they both trade queens while white takes the b7 pawn with his bishop. Hikaru does his second great move in the game with knight to d7 attacking the pawn. White then pulls his bishop back, black attacks the h5 pawn while white takes the h5 pawn. Then black continues to push and white brings his king back to g1. Black then threatens the bishop, white brings the bishop back to its original spot, 5 moves back. Black then protects its pawn with rook to c5, then white moves his king. Black then further protects its pawn with knight to a4. White continues to push its king, and black retreats its rook. White pushes again, and black moves a pawn forward to do f5. And g4, so white retreats his bishop to d1, black then checks the king and then moves the knight to b2 putting pressure on the bishop. White moves his bishop, and then black checks again. Then goes back to its original spot. White goes back to his original spot resulting in no progress being made at all. Black moves the king, and then white brings his bishop forward to b5. Black threatens the bishop, white retreats to its original spot and so does black, then white moves the bishop back to the spot it was just kicked from, then both players move their king. And finally black pushes the pawn forward. White moves the king and get checked, then a trade commences and black's pawn is in ruins, so Hikaru decides to attack another pawn with rook to h4. White defends and then black pushes a pawn forward asking for a trade. White however refuses and moves the rook to h1. Hikaru does his third great move of the game with pawn to h3, white trades, resulting in white's rook getting trapped. Then Hikaru plays his fourth great move with rook to c4. White then moves his rook back to c1, blocking the pawn, and then Hikaru does his fifth great move with king to g5 blocking the pawn's path. Rooks trade and white is absolutely screwed with king to h4 attacking the pawn, and Hikaru's sixth great move. White cannot do anything anymore, so he moves his king to the d3 square. Black takes the pawn, and it was here when white ran out of time.